A very good morning to all of you. In this class, we will start with a new poem that is Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. Who was Matthew Arnold? Matthew Arnold was an English poet, a cultural critic who worked as an inspector of schools. He was born in 1822 and was the eldest son of Mary Arnold and Dr. Thomas Arnold. His father was a headmaster of a rugby school where he received his first education. He completed his graduation from the Oxford University in the year 1844. His first work was the long poem that is Alaric at Rome, was published in the year 1840 when he was still in the school. His first collection, The Stray Traveller and Other Poems, was appeared in the year 1849. Okay, now Dover Beach. Now let us discuss about this poem that is Dover Beach. Dover Beach is a brief dramatic monologue generally recognized as Arnold's best and most widely known poem, written in the year 1851. It was inspired by his visit with his wife to the south coast of England, where the white cliffs of Dover stand, just 20 miles from the coast of France. The speaker in the poem begins with the romanticization of natural landscape, but later on moves to lament the loss of religious or spiritual faith. The loss of faith is then substituted with the love of faith the lovers have for each other. Before we start predicting the poem Dover Beach, we need to know on which influences Matthew Arnold to compose this poem. Darwin's theory of evolution was one of the causes, and due to that, the Victorian crisis of faith took place, and that actually compelled Matthew Arnold to compose this poem. The Victorian era, which was from 1837 to 1901, is generally associated with the crisis of faith, caused by the scientific discoveries, especially the publication of Charles Darwin's revolutionary book titled On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection in the year 1859. It introduced a scientific theory standing that biological specimens, including humans, evolve over the course of generations through a process of natural selection. In other words, it contradicted existing religious beliefs and scientific knowledge of the Victorians. According to the existing religious belief, God created man directly from the clay imagined by breathing him into life. Now here the discrepancy took place. Before that, the religious belief was hovering over everyone and everything around. But with this Darwin's theory of evolution, things have been changed. People are stirred with this thought, like they never thought that the evolution of human beings are due to a theory and it has a scientific basis. Previously they used to think like God has created man directly from a clay, and they imagine that that is due to God they are allowed to breathe. But this theory was diminished by Darwin's theory, and due to that the Victorian crisis of faith takes place in the society. That actually compels Matthew Arnold to compose this poem Dover Beach. So we need to know the background first so that we can understand the story, because the background and the themes, these are the basic criterias on which the poem is based on. So we need to know these things first. As you can see on the screen, the background, Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach is an expression of a particular kind of unease and religious uncertainty that arose during the mid-Victorian period. As I told you, the discrepancy took place due to this evolution theory, a reaction to the loss of faith that was happening in line with the rise of science. This was the time of Darwin. The sea of faith, which had once seemed to girdle the Britain so firmly, was beginning to ebb away. Now the sea here, we have seen the imagery of sea has been used in two different ways. First is a literal meaning and second is a metaphorical meaning. So it seems to girdle, it seems to protect Britain so long with its religious beliefs. Now it seems to ebb away. Okay, and this left many, like Arnold speakers, feeling that the world around them was now no longer of certitude. Certitude means certain. There is no certainty prevails here anymore. As people began to turn away from a near universal Christian faith, they seem to lost ignorant armies who clash with each other seemingly in the dark, unguided by any clear lights. So without the religious beliefs, they seem to be the ignorant armies without any proper light to guide them. So having lost the belief in religion, they find themselves ignorant and they have no goalpost to follow. There is no light, no virtue which will guide them to the right path. He makes a classical allusion referring to the Greek dramatist Sophocles, but he serves only to indicate the misery he is feeling now, one that stretches across the ages. Sophocles too heard the note of sadness in the sea and struggled to turn it into certitude with little success. So Matthew Arnold says he is not the first one to feel the stone of sadness. There was a famous dramatist named Sophocles also felt the same. That is why it is actually framed here as eternal sadness. Okay, the sea in the poem is used to great effect. It is both literal, as I told you, a boundary between England and the far off France coast, and metaphorical. Once the sea of faith seems to protect the island nation, now the sea simply represents a continuous home for human sadness and misery, transmitting the same sounds of confusion and ignorance across the nations and generation. Arnold's speaker can find no solace or hope of consolation other than to cling more closely to his lover, that only certain thing now in his world. So Arnold says here that the sea used to girdle them, used to protect them. It was the sea of faith in its metaphorical sense of the term, seemed to protect the island nation. But now it seems like only that it is transmitting the confusing sound which has no base, which is only letting us hear the tone of sadness and misery. So the generation is now pathless. There is no one to guide. That is why the speaker here feels no solace. He is utterly confused and he needs the consolation. Okay, so these are the basic themes on which the poem based basically. So the now when we'll go on line by line explanation, we will have no difficulty in getting the poem. Now we need to know the summary. What is the summary of the poem? So as we can see, the speaker looks out upon a calm sea. and observes the fullness of the tide and moon reflecting on the water. So we have seen the poem has started with a representation of natural beauty. Okay, and the as we can see, the sea is quite calm and the fullness of tide and moon reflecting on the water. So it was indeed a very pleasant scenario. Looking across the English Channel, the speaker sees the lights of the French coast fade away, while the cliffs of the English coast stand tall and bright. Now see, one light that is getting faded away, and the you know the while the cliffs of the English coast stand still and bright, and the bay seems calm. So here the poet is giving us a hint, like the religious light is getting faded away, and the light of science and reason, that is glittering, and due to this the English coast is seen visibly. So suddenly the speaker addresses someone else. So this is called dramatic monologue, and explores this person to come and look what the speaker is looking at. So as we know, he has gone for his for a holiday along with his wife named Lucy. So probably he is calling his wife to come to the window and to see what he is looking at right now, and to enjoy the night's pleasant air. The speaker senses something not quite right. Now see, suddenly the situation is going to be changed. Till now we have seen the poet is seen enjoying the scenario outside, and he was praising the light that is still glimmering, and he was actually enjoying the moon reflecting on the water, and he called one of his companions, or the only companion with whom he was there. So he called and he asked him or her to look at what he is looking at that moment. But the speaker senses something is not quite right, and describes the spray where the water meets the moonlit land. The spray is what? That is froth. We all know, we have visited Puri, Digha, Kobalam sea beach. We have seen the froth. Okay, so that is, here it is called spray. So where the water means the moonlit land. So as he already told, the land was quite blanched with the moonlit. So it is thought that the land seems to be white and bleached with the moonlight. The speaker instructs the other person to listen to the sound of pebbles as the waves shift them back and forth. So he is asking his companion to listen to the sound being produced by the pebbles, so that with the waves, when it is coming to the shore, and when it is going back, the sound of the pebbles is asked by the poet to be listened by the companion of his. The speaker notes this slow repeating action and identifies the eternal sadness. So when the pebble, when it is coming along with the the wave, when it is it's high foam, but when it is going back, it is the sound of pebbles. There is a roaring sound, and the sound has something to say, which was maybe symbolizing the eternal sadness. As we know, Sophocles also heard the same sound years back, okay, and he also felt the same sadness. All of a sudden, the speaker thinks about the ancient Greek playwright. See, Sophocles and imagines Sophocles hearing the same sadness in the Aegean Sea, here this Mediterranean Sea, as the speaker hears now on the English coast. Sophocles, in the mind of the speaker, likens the sad sound and waves to the general sorrow of humanity, which moves like waves. The speaker then notices another thought that comes with the sound of the sea. Explaining this next thought, the speaker describes religious faith as a sea and was once full the tide. At that time it reached around the earth like a girdle. As I told you, the sea is compared here as a sea of religious belief, which is very deep and which has its profound base. Once upon a time it seems to girdle the earth, it seems to protect. Now, though the speaker just hears the sea's sad retreat, now he can witness that, he can feel the sound of sadness is being heard, because the religious girdle has been diminished with the scientific belief of Darwin's theory of evolution. So now, though the speaker just hears the sea's sad retreat, as the sea of faith becomes smaller, says the speaker, it disappears into the atmosphere and leaves the edges of world naked. So now he is telling that the boundary is getting smaller. That is, the sea of faith is getting smaller day by day. One day it will be completely obsolete, okay, and it disappears into the atmosphere and leaves the edges of the world naked. So without the religious belief, without the religious belief, the world seems to be like a naked one in front of the poet, which once upon a time was quite protected with the girdle of the sea of faith. Now the poet is very sad, and he can feel the eternal sadness as he can witness the whole earth is lying naked in front of the poet. So this is the crisis of faith. This is the main theme of the poetry, the crisis of faith, the crisis of religious faith. So on which this whole poem actually evolves. We will not discuss the poem line by line today, but we will just have a quick look of the stanzas, what it tells. So we will summarize the stanzas and we will end the class. So after going through this, I want you to read all this beforehand, because without reading that you won't be able to understand the meaning of the poem, okay? So as we can see, the poem is divided into 4 stanzas. Free verse, the poem is written in free verse with no particular meter or rhyme scheme, although some of the words do rhyme. Form: elegy. Arnold Stovovich is considered an elegy, lamenting the world's loss of religious faith during a time of progress in science and industry. Dramatic monologue. Matthew Arnold Dovovich is a dramatic monologue because the poet is addressing a silent audience. The effect is of one person directly addressing another, while the reader listens in. Explanation: as I told you, we'll just go by the summary of each stanza. The first stanza opens with a happy mood. The speaker invites his beloved to come to the window to enjoy with him the calm sea and the sweet air on a beautiful night. The speaker, however, cannot resist the sadness that he feels by repetitive sound on the waves on the shore pebbles. So the shore was quite pebbly, not sandy. The sound which is being produced by the pebbles, it is the cause of poet's sadness. The sound reminds the speaker of ever-changing fortunes of people. In the second stanza, the speaker imagines that the same sound heard by the Greek dramatist Sophocles made him think of the recurrence of human suffering. In the third stanza, the speaker compares the receding waves to the decay of spiritual faith. Religion that used to be like a sash or belt surrounding humanity and protecting it from the doubt and despair, and now it is removed, leaving behind a faithless humanity. As I told you previously, the sea of faith used to girdle or protect the earth. Now it has removed the earth and it looks like lying naked in front of the poet. The fourth stanza, the speaker turns to his beloved, saying that it is in our sincerity, love, that we can find solace in a world full of deception and uncertainty. So we have seen towards the end of the poem, the poet urges his beloved to come and have faith among each other, because this is the faith they will nurture till end. Okay, so by doing that they will find solace in a world full of deception and uncertainty. So here the class ends. You all will go through all the materials well. Now in the next class we will be discussing the poem with its translation and explanation. Hopefully after going through this you will have no problem in understanding or deciphering the poem further. So the class ends here. Do study well, take care of yourself, have a great day ahead. Thank you.